is Danny, and this is Ale and Agony. How we diddly doing? Well, come on in. Let's get cozy and talk about mystery. That is correct. It is our very first ever mystery case, and I hope that you are super excited. And I am melting today, you guys. We've had a heat wave in the UK this week. It's been a hot 30 degrees plus, and the air is thick with 2 C's. And there is, in fact, a thunderstorm a-brewing in the background. So if you can hear it, super sorry about that. I think we need it, though. I think we definitely need the rain. But before we get into today's case, let's start with the ale of this week's episode. And I am drinking a cheeky alcohol-free number this week. I am drinking Adnams 0.5% Ghostship. So get yourself cozy, because I'll be telling you today about the disappearance of Sabrina Aisenberg. So let's crack it open. Now, it's a bottle today rather than a can. And fun fact, my bottle opener is in fact a penis with the word Tenerife on it. So I'm a classy lady. That was nice, wasn't it? This case is about 5-month-old Sabrina Aisenberg, who disappeared from her crib on the 24th of November 1997. And to this day, she's still not been found, dead or alive. Dead or alive. So how did this happen? How does a 5-month-old baby just vanish during the night? So let's take it back to the morning of November 24th. We're in Valrico, Florida, and it's warm outside, despite the fact that it's November and it's 6:30 a.m. And Marlene Aisenberg has just woken up, and she's heading through the house about to start her day. And I assume that she's going to go make coffee at 6:30 because I get up slightly earlier than that, and I will not function without a cup of coffee. Marlene said that she could sense that something was wrong, and as she walked through the home, she saw that the internal door that connects the house to the garage was ajar. And through that door, she could see into her street because her garage door was fully opened. So Marlene immediately runs into Sabrina's room, as it's the closest room to the garage. And there, to her horror, she finds an empty crib. And so Marlene immediately calls the police.
911. Hello. I need the police. My baby's been kidnapped. Alright, ma'am, need to calm down. Okay. Alright, take a deep breath. What do you mean your baby's been kidnapped? I just got up to wake my son up. My garage door was wide open. My house to my door was wide open, and my baby's gone out of the crib. How old is your baby? My baby is 5 months old. Oh, God, help me. Alright, stay on the line. Do you have other kids in the house? See Monica's there. She is. It's just a baby.
So listening to that call, that woman is emotional. She is frantic, clearly worried. And you think, oh my gosh, this poor woman, she must be losing her mind. And then you listen to the call a few more times, and you start to pick up on certain things. So firstly, the 911 operator says to Marlene, all right, stay on the line. Do you have any other kids in the house? Marlene then shouts to her husband, Stephen, and says, Steve, see if Monica's there. Yes, she is. It's just the baby. So the operator had to prompt Marlene to check on her other children to make sure that they were safe. And the thing that didn't feel right to me was, surely if you find that your baby is missing and you have other children in the house, would you not instinctively go and check on them too? Also, Marlene's other 2 children were 6 and 10 years old. And don't get me wrong, I mean, I have very little interaction with children, but I would imagine that a 10-year-old could pick up their 5-month-old baby sister up out of their crib and maybe take her to their room if they wanted to play. So although the call is super emotional, it does make me question why Marlene didn't check the rest of the house or her other children before immediately calling the police. Hopefully you can't hear that thunder. Stephen went over to his neighbour Scott Middleton's home, and Scott was a former policeman. And Scott described Stephen knocking on his front door and explaining that Sabrina was missing, and then he looked down the street and he saw that Marlene was stood outside their front door, and he said that she appeared very calm and just sort of casually waved at Scott from across the street. When deputies from Hillsborough Sheriff's Department arrived on the scene, they were quite shocked at the state of the house. Photos show that the house was heavily cluttered and there were piles of rubbish sort of stacked up. Every surface in the home was covered in clothes, toys, or rubbish, and the police were looking around thinking, oh dear, this could possibly be a case of neglect. Having 3 kids must be super tough, and I get that parents can easily fall behind on the washing, picking up the toys, but the house was also described as being dirty as well as cluttered. But Marlene's best friend did come forward to the authorities and assured them that, Marlene wouldn't be winning any awards for her clean home, and this was just Marlene's way. Her home had always been like this, but she loved her kids and she was adamant that there was zero neglect in the home. The police started speaking to Marlene and her husband Stephen. They found out that neither of them had locked the internal garage door, and they admitted that they hadn't checked if the front garage door was closed before going to bed. And they also did not set their house alarm that they had installed, so anyone could come into the home at any time without making too much noise and without triggering the alarm. And unfortunately, when the police were on their way to the Aisenbergs' home, the local media were right behind them, and this story blew the fuck up. This is all anyone could talk about. This poor, beautiful baby girl, 5 months old, kidnapped in the middle of the night. Like, how fucking awful. The media loved it. And the police, of course, urged the Aisenbergs to make a plea in the media, to speak to the kidnappers directly and ask that Sabrina be returned. So that's what they did. Only they didn't portray the emotion that the public expected to see. Marlene spoke on the news, and she was very calm, super collected, which people mistook for her being cold and unemotional. And I understand the backlash at first, because you would expect the parents to be on TV in floods of tears, begging for their daughter to be returned to them. But we also need to remember that people grieve and deal with these situations very differently. Like maybe Marlene was just in shock. Maybe she was numb from emotion because her baby had been taken away. Or maybe it was something more sinister. We've spoken about the fact that the house wasn't locked up, that the alarm wasn't set. But there is also the family dog, Brownie. A family friend described Brownie as a nut who barked at their own shadow. So why didn't Brownie alert the Aisenbergs to their nighttime intruder? However, Marlene's best friend, who defended her poor housekeeping, also counteracts this statement. She said Brownie was super laid back, never barked, and also said that Marlene was very emotional about Sabrina's disappearance. But the FBI were growing very suspicious of Marlene and Stephen, so they tapped their phone lines. Stephen was on a call with his brother, who was asking for an update on Sabrina, and Stephen was adamant that she'd been kidnapped. And then, whilst on the phone to his brother, a call waiting beep started to come over the line. This could be the kidnappers calling to ask for a ransom, or to taunt the family, or someone with information on baby Sabrina. But Stephen ignored the call, and this just added fuel to the fire for the FBI's growing suspicions. Marlene and Stephen started expressing their anger towards the police department. They had told the Aisenbergs that they were looking for a body, not a baby. And Marlene was furious that they were making no effort to find her daughter. And she tells people that just a few nights before, a woman down the street had a window to her baby's room smashed. And Marlene thought that they could be connected, but she insisted that the police refused to investigate. Which, that does seem shitty. Like, they could easily be connected. It does sound quite similar. The media coverage continued to hinder the public's view on the Aisenbergs. As well as coming across cold and unemotional in their plea campaign, they were also photographed laughing with the police, which just riled people up even more. And just 2 years before Sabrina went missing, there was a huge story about Susan Smith. Susan claimed that her 2 sons were kidnapped during a carjacking, and for 9 days she stood in front of the news cameras asking for her sons to be returned to her. Following an intense investigation and a nationwide search for her children, Susan admitted that she had locked her children in her car and let it roll into a lake so her children would drown. All because she wanted to start a relationship with a new guy that told her that he didn't want kids. So she just fucking killed them. Now, 2 years later, you have a similar story of unemotional parents stood in front of the cameras, claiming their child had been kidnapped, and the public were quick to make comparisons to the Susan Smith case. It was also released that Marlene had 2 inconclusive results from polygraph tests. And although they don't hold any merit nowadays, and we know that they're a load of bollocks, back in the 90s, polygraphs were considered to be hard evidence. I remember when I was a kid watching Jerry Springer, they'd do a polygraph test, and that shit was like set in stone. Did you have an affair with your neighbour? No. The polygraph says you're lying, and then everyone's like, wah! It's, it was a big thing. So 3 days into Sabrina's disappearance, the world is not looking favourably at Marlene and Stephen. And so Stephen's brother, who is a lawyer, tells him it is time to suit up. So they hired Mr. Barry Cohen, who was well known for his aggressive legal tactics. Barry Cohen had previously represented a local Florida chiropractor called William Latour, who was at the wheel of his 35-foot high-speed cigarette boat on Memorial Day weekend in 1989, when he collided with a 17-foot boat full of teenagers. 4 teenagers were killed and several more were injured. William was charged with 4 counts of vessel homicide, but Barry painted a picture in the media as an unavoidable, tragic event for everyone concerned. He portrayed William's arrest as politically motivated and managed press conferences with William's tearful wife. And William was eventually acquitted of all 4 deaths. So this guy's fucking good. When Barry took on the Aisenbergs case, he said, quote, "When I saw the police were acting in bad faith and they were destined to try and frame Marlene and Stephen, that's when we stopped talking to them," end quote. That's right. Under Barry's legal instruction, Marlene and Stephen stopped talking to the police. They even pleaded the 5th when they stood in front of the grand jury. How in the world this seemed like a smart move, I have no idea. Seems fucking bonkers to me. How are you ever going to find your child if you've refused to speak to the police? I have no idea. So they aren't speaking to the police or the FBI, so the police department gets a warrant to secretly plant bugs in the kitchen and master bedroom of the Aisenbergs' home. These devices can pick up a whisper, within 30 feet, and the police listen to it from 7 a.m. to midnight for 3 months. Despite what the Aisenbergs and Barry Cohen thought, the police were still trying to actively find Sabrina, and they carried out an extensive search in the local swamps in the area, but no evidence of baby Sabrina was found. Barry went on a media rampage against the Tampa Police Department. So rather than telling the public what Sabrina was last seen wearing, or what her hair colour was, or anything useful to help the search for Sabrina, he was dedicating his time to slagging off the police. Barry claimed that the Tampa Police Department should issue an apology to Marlene and Stephen, as well as the other law enforcement officers whose integrity they had undermined. When asked later down the line if he felt that he should have been kinder to the police department, Barry said that this was a war, and you don't go into a war with a BB gun. Like, mate, fuck off. This guy harmed this case and made the Aisenbergs look way worse, in my opinion. He just kept repeating to the police that they had no evidence that Marlene and Stephen were involved. There is no evidence. It's like, shut up and just talk about the bloody baby. In May of 1999, so a couple of years later, the Aisenberg family moved back to Stephen's childhood home in Bethesda. And I hope they didn't overpack, otherwise their possessions could fall out. The reason for the move was that Marlene just had no respect for the local law enforcement in Tampa anymore. In September that year, Marlene is packing up for a trip to Boston when a swarm of cars pull into the driveway and a gaggle of people approach the house. You see, I wanted to say swarm again there, but it just didn't flow right, and gaggle is just such a delightful word. So this sounds scary, right? You've moved into this new area and all of a sudden a gaggle of strangers are coming into your home. You'd call the police or your husband, right? Nope. Marlene called Barry. There is a new girl in the attorney's office, and she placed Marlene on hold. Meanwhile, these people are breaking in downstairs, and she hears someone shout up, "Marlene, you need to come downstairs." And in the episode of 48 Hours that I watched on YouTube, Marlene is at the top of the stairs doing a dramatic reenactment for us. She says that she reaches the top of the stairs and there is a gun pointed directly at her face. And then obviously, because it's American TV, it cuts to an advert. Cliffhanger. She's in shock. Like, bitch, it's the FBI, here to arrest her butt. And then over town, at Stephen's work, arresting him at the same time. Prosecutors are giddy. They have an airtight case now of the cheeky little recording devices that they planted in the Aisenbergs' home. And they're able to arrest Marlene and Stephen for lying and conspiracy. 2,600 conversations were recorded, and during that time, the police heard the Aisenbergs discussing murdering their baby daughter, Sabrina. Marlene was recorded saying the following: "The baby is dead and buried. It was found dead because you did it. The baby's dead no matter what you say. You just did it." Then Stephen is recorded saying, "We need to discuss the way that we can beat the charge. We will do what we have to do. I wish I didn't harm her. It was the cocaine." Like, goddamn, that's some hard fucking evidence. And it's been more than 2 years since Sabrina disappeared, and they finally have the evidence they need to convict her parents. The recordings weren't enough to charge them for murder, and there was no physical body found. So the prosecutor, Stephen Coons, yes, it's another Stephen, sorry, but this one has a PH. So Stephen Coons wants them convicted for conspiracy. Barry, of course, slates Stephen Coons in the media, and he says all he cares about are his convictions and getting his name in the paper. Like pot kettle black there, Mr. Cohen. He also maliciously describes Coons as ambitious. Like, how dare he have aspirations? So 15 months later, in December 2000, it's time for these tapes to be played in court. And it was packed in that courthouse. Everyone wanted to hear the concrete evidence. So let's have a listen. Did you hear the part about the baby being dead and buried? And all the cocaine? Nope, me neither. White noise, mumbling, and static was all the courtroom heard that day. And the judge looked down his nose at the prosecutor and glared at him, as if to say, "Is this all you've got?" All these people, all this time and effort, and this is what they presented? The cheek, the nerve, the gall, the audacity, and the gumption. Cohen brought in a former FBI audio analyst to listen to the tapes, and they confirmed that the tapes absolutely did not match the manuscript presented. However, like many cases, the prosecution had an audio expert all of their own, who also happened to be a celebrity personal investigator, ooh la la, Mr. Anthony Pellicano, who had worked with Michael Jackson and Elizabeth Taylor. And they stated that the tapes did match the manuscript. But as we know, you often get experts in cases that both say opposing statements despite being experts in the same field, so who bloody knows? I know that I didn't hear anything in those tapes, so it's very much like anything, isn't it? It's like, I watch an episode of Ghost Adventures. Something is supposedly said by an entity. I have absolutely no fucking idea what it's meant to say. As soon as they put subtitles over the top of it, I'm like, oh, yeah, totally. It's one of those. It was of course established that there was a technical problem with the application of the recording devices. And may I ask how they recorded 2,600 conversations from 7 a.m. to midnight over many, many months, and no one thought to say, "Does this sound bad to you?" Cohen went on to say that the police were framing the Aisenbergs, that they had no facts and their case was completely fabricated. And at this point in time, what actual evidence is there against the Aisenbergs? They appear emotionless on the telly. They're incapable of locking a door. They apparently can't clean. But those aren't chargeable offences. To make matters worse for the prosecutors, they had told a little porky pie to the judge to get the bugs planted in the Aisenbergs' home. They claimed that the 911 call from Marlene that we heard at the very beginning of the episode was emotionless, which I personally disagree with, and the judge was pissed. So in February 2001, in a 2-paragraph request filed in federal court in Florida, prosecutors asked that the charges against Stephen and Marlene Aisenberg, who had been accused of lying and conspiring in the 1997 disappearance of their daughter, be dismissed. Stephen Coons, deputy chief for the criminal division, told the court that they were acting because there is no longer a reasonable probability of conviction against the defendants. And the Tampa magistrate judge, Mark A. Pizzo, ruled on February 14th that the tapes were so bad, a canvas of nebulous conversations, that the police version of what they contained was baseless and reckless, and so all charges against the Aisenbergs were dropped. And to this day, Sabrina has still not been found. Marlene keeps a bedroom in their home ready for Sabrina for when she comes home. She keeps her toys in there along with souvenirs that they have bought for her during family holidays. They've also released and promoted an age-progressed photo of what Sabrina would look like now. And Marlene says that when Sabrina comes home, it will show all of the doubters that they were innocent this entire time. And that, my friend, is the case of Sabrina Aisenberg. What do you think? Did the parents have something to do with it? Was she in fact kidnapped in the middle of the night? Is Sabrina still out there somewhere? I personally think it's more likely that Sabrina died at home by accident. Maybe one of the other kids was involved and they wanted to cover it up, but that's just my personal speculation. This thunder's getting loud, goddamn. No rain yet though. Oh no, literally just starting. It's a tricky one, isn't it? Because it's, at first, you hear the 911 call and you think, oh my God, shit, like this is awful. And then you're like, wait, why didn't you check on the other kids? Wait, why didn't you lock the house? Why didn't you set the alarm? What? And then the fact that their attorney just goes on this like massive vendetta against the police. He's not known for being out there promoting Sabrina and talking about her. He's known for being out there and just slagging everyone else off. And so I wonder, if they had a different attorney, would things have gone differently? I don't know, but at the end of the day, he did the job that he was hired to do. He got them off the hook for, conspiring and lying and getting prison time for that. So he did that part of it. Let me know what you think. But let's take it back to the very beginning. How was my ale? I am always on the hunt for a really decent tasting alcohol-free ale, and it's fucking hard to find. But this one, this hits right. It's got that awesome citrus and hoppy kick to it. And after having a cheeky read online, they actually brew the standard Ghostship and then reverse engineer the alcohol out of it, which is why it still has a punch of flavour. Which I think is genius. I didn't know you could do that, so that's very exciting. I got mine in Tesco's, and they have them on a club card offer at the moment for £1 a bottle, so I picked up 5. It's also vegan friendly for all my vegan homies out there. Can I get away with saying homies? Probably not, actually. In this episode's show notes, you will find a link to the 48-hour documentary I mentioned, along with a 2018 update on the Aisenbergs, which is in 2 small videos. Shout out to Redhanded for their episode on this case. It is episode 37 of their podcast, so go find that link too and give it a good listen. You can find updates about new episodes over on Twitter and Instagram, and I'll be sure to post the photos of this case over on the Instagram page. Both pages can be found under Ale and Agony. If you would like to support the show and you have some spare cash and you would like to throw it at me, then you can find me on Patreon at patreon.com/aleandagony, and I'll be sure to give you a shout out next episode, and you can also get access to some cheeky bonus content from time to time. I would of course be super grateful for any feedback and some more of those 5-star reviews over on Apple Podcasts. As I said before, those do really help to bump me up the list of recommendations to people. Thanks so much for spending this time with me, and well done on getting it through to the end, and I hope to catch you on the next episode. Goodbye, my friends.